My great-grandmother, Elizabeth, watched my great-grandfather, John, take his last breath on a cold November night. They had been inseparable for over 60 years, bound together by a love that defied time itself. As she held his frail hand in hers, tears streamed down her face. From that day on, Elizabeth was never the same. Every morning, she would wake up, stare at the ceiling, and mutter, "Damn it." It was as if she was disappointed to find herself still tethered to this world, longing to join John wherever he had gone. My great-aunts, Mary and Alice, were worried about her. They noticed how she would often sit by the window, staring into the distance. Concerned, they decided to set up a baby monitor in her room to keep an ear out for her. What they heard through that monitor was beyond anything they could have imagined. Late at night, when the house was silent, they would hear Elizabeth's voice. Talking. But not to herself. She was having conversations with people who were no longer among the living. She would mention names of family members who had passed away long ago. One afternoon, the sun cast a golden glow through Elizabeth's room. Mary and Alice were downstairs, their usual chatter hushed by an eerie sense of anticipation. Suddenly, they heard Elizabeth's voice, clearer and more joyful than it had been in years. "John, finally. Why are you always late?" she exclaimed, her voice tinged with relief and happiness. Mary and Alice froze, their hearts pounding. John. She had said John. Their father's name. Gathering their courage, they made their way upstairs, each step feeling like an eternity. They reached Elizabeth's room and stood outside the door for a moment, too afraid to open it. The room was silent now, the only sound the faint ticking of an old clock on the mantel. Taking a deep breath, they opened the door and stepped inside. Elizabeth was lying peacefully on her bed, a serene smile on her face. Mary reached out to touch her mother's hand, her own trembling. It was cold. Elizabeth was gone. She had gone to be with John. I used to work in an old building with a dark history. It was said that long ago, it had been a burial ground. Over time, many had lost their lives there, leaving behind a lingering sense of unrest. I often worked late, staying until I was the last one there, the silence of the night settling heavily around me. The first time it happened, I had just finished a particularly grueling day. The building was eerily quiet, the only sound the soft hum of the fluorescent lights. As I walked to my car, the shadows seemed to lengthen, the air growing colder. I got into my car, feeling a shiver run down my spine. I started the engine, the sound echoing in the stillness. As I glanced into my rearview mirror to back up, I saw him. An old man, pale and gaunt, standing directly behind my car, staring at me with hollow eyes. My heart pounded in my chest as I whipped around to look behind me. No one was there. I shook it off, thinking my tired mind was playing tricks on me. But it happened again, and again. Each time, the same pale old man, standing silently, watching me. His eyes seemed to bore into my soul, his presence sending chills down my spine. After a while, the encounters became so frequent that I stopped looking behind me before backing out of the parking space. I couldn't bear to see him anymore, to feel that icy stare. One night, I was particularly tired, the weight of the day pressing down on me. I started my car, hesitated for a moment, and glanced in the mirror. There he was, standing closer than ever, his face twisted into a silent scream. My breath caught in my throat as I turned around, desperate to catch a glimpse of him directly. But once again, the space behind my car was empty. The sense of unease lingered long after I drove away, the memory of those hollow eyes haunting me. I never told anyone at work, fearing they would think I was losing my mind. But deep down, I knew. The building held secrets, its walls echoing with the voices of those who had never truly left. Each night as I left, I could feel them. Watching. Waiting. And the old man. He was always there. Always watching. We lived in a big house, located in the Blue Ridge Mountains. We grew up there, and nothing ever happened. But when we went to my grandma's house, just down the road, the creepiest things would happen to my sister. She would say that at night, after we all fell asleep, she would be woken up by a slap across the stomach. She thought it was me, and came to my room to yell at me. When she came in, I was sound asleep, and she freaked out. I let her sleep in my room that night. Another time, we were outside playing. It was getting dark. I said as we were cleaning up, that I had to go inside to the bathroom, and I would be back. She said okay, but when I got back, she was laying on the ground, screaming and crying. She said she saw me come out of the house, and run right at her. Then punch her in the face. She said I took off around the corner of the house. When she went after me, she saw something horrifying. She said it was a tall creature, probably about 7 feet tall, wearing a black robe. She said she saw it and froze in fear. It kept looking at her, but all she could see were its glowing eyes from the darkness. Then she said it let out a horrible scream. She blinked, and it was gone. Then she collapsed on the ground, where I found her. These things only happened at Grandma's house. The Blue Ridge Mountains were peaceful, but Grandma's house held something else entirely. Not long after, Grandma began experiencing strange things herself. She would hear whispers at night, see shadows move, and feel a cold presence in her home. It got so bad, she couldn't stay there anymore. So, Grandma came to live with us. Our house in the Blue Ridge Mountains became her refuge from whatever haunted her home. The peace we once knew was now shadowed by the memories of what happened at Grandma's house. A good friend of mine had tragically just seen his best friend drown. His friend had gotten tangled in underwater cables and couldn't get free. It was horrible. My friend was sitting on the side of the lake, waiting for the body to be recovered. Of course, he felt terrible and was angry at the helicopters flying around, invading the scene. A man came up and sat beside him, not saying much, just being there. He was dressed in a flannel shirt and jeans and told my friend his name was John. He was a comfort. After the funeral, when life was getting back to a routine, we were all worried about my friend. He felt so guilty and sad. Everyone kept urging him to go to therapy, but he resisted. He decided to rent a cabin in the woods, far away from the lake. He said it was just to get away, but later admitted to me that it was on his mind. One evening, he went for a hike in the dense woods, the tall trees casting long, eerie shadows as the sun set. The air was thick with silence, only the occasional rustle of leaves breaking the stillness. He rounded a bend, and there, standing by an old, weathered tree, was John. Same flannel shirt and everything. My friend stopped, his heart racing. John smiled warmly and they talked for hours, the deepening night adding a chilling atmosphere to their conversation. John spoke of hope, of holding on, of finding strength in the darkest times. My friend felt an unexpected sense of peace. As he thanked John and started back to the cabin, he felt lighter, a glimmer of hope sparking within him. He turned around to ask John one last thing. John was gone. Vanished into the night. My friend rushed back to the spot, calling out for John, but there was no trace of him. The woods were silent, as if holding their breath. Shaken, he returned to the cabin, realizing he had encountered something beyond explanation. Thankfully, my friend came home to tell the tale. "Thank you, John,"